The Alpha King had faced enemy armies without fear. But nothing prepared him for what he saw that morning. The royal nursery was empty. His newborn cubs had vanished without a single cry. The doors were still locked. The guards had never left their posts. There was no scent, no blood, no footprints. It was as if the future of the kingdom had simply disappeared into thin air. Then the royal trackers found something impossible. Deep inside the forbidden forest beneath an ancient silver tree, a starving Omega girl lay asleep with torn clothes and bruises covering her body. And resting peacefully on her chest were the Alpha King's missing cubs. The moment the soldiers tried to take them back, the tiny cubs unleashed terrifying alpha power and attacked everyone who came near her, even their own father. Then the frightened Omega slowly opened her eyes, looked straight at the Alpha King, and whispered words that froze every wolf in the forest. "Why do your children know my heartbeat?" No one knew that this single question was about to uncover the greatest royal secret buried for more than 20 years and change the destiny of every wolf in the kingdom forever. The Alpha King's roar shattered the silence before dawn. The sound rolled through the palace like thunder crashing against stone. Servants froze where they stood. Guards dropped to one knee without thinking. Every wolf inside the royal fortress felt the command in their bones. "My heirs are gone." The words echoed through every hallway. For one heartbeat, the entire kingdom seemed to stop breathing. Then chaos exploded. Heavy doors slammed open. Warriors raced through endless corridors. Palace maids searched beneath silk blankets as if the tiny royal cubs might somehow still be hiding inside the nursery. Every guard swore the same oath. No one had entered. No one had left. Every gate had remained sealed through the night. Yet the two newborn heirs had vanished. The golden cradles stood empty beneath the soft morning light. Tiny blankets still carried the warm scent of the cubs. One small silver toy rested on the polished floor as if a child had simply crawled away. But newborn royal cubs could not walk. Alpha King Kale Draven stood beside the empty cradle with both fists clenched so tightly that blood slowly dripped from his palms. His amber eyes burned with fury while his wolf fought against the impossible truth. Someone had stolen the future of the kingdom. General Darius stepped forward and lowered his head. "We searched every chamber, Your Majesty." Kale looked at him with ice in his eyes. "Search again." "We already have." "Then search until these walls crumble." No one dared answer. The scent trackers arrived moments later. Huge gray wolves lowered their noses to the nursery floor. They circled the room once, then twice. Their movements slowed. Confusion spread across every face. "There is no foreign scent." One tracker looked almost frightened as he spoke. The cubs simply disappeared. Silence settled over the room. Impossible. Every alpha knew it. Royal heirs carried the strongest scent in the kingdom. No one could steal them without leaving a trail. Unless something far older had called them away. Far beyond the palace walls, the whispering forest slept beneath a blanket of silver mist. Ancient trees reached toward the sky like silent guardians. Even the bravest wolves avoided the place after sunset because strange voices were said to drift between the branches whenever the moon reached its highest point. That morning the forest felt strangely peaceful. A young Omega girl slept beneath an ancient silver tree. Her long silver-white hair spilled across the roots like flowing moonlight. Her gray dress was torn in several places. Fresh bruises covered her arms where someone had dragged her across rough ground. Her face looked pale from hunger. She had not eaten properly in days. Yet despite the cold she slept peacefully. Something warm rested against her chest. Two tiny silver wolf cubs. The royal heirs slept quietly with their small bodies curled against her heartbeat. Their glowing blue eyes remained closed. Tiny paws pressed gently against her worn dress as soft purring filled the quiet forest. It looked less like two lost cubs had found a stranger. It looked like two children had finally found home. High above the trees a hawk cried. Moments later the silence broke. Royal trackers burst through the forest. Dozens of warriors surrounded the clearing with drawn swords. Wolves growled as they spread into a wide circle. Then every one of them stopped moving. General Darius stared in complete disbelief. "No," another warrior whispered. "It cannot be." Alpha King Kale stepped through the crowd. For the first time in years his cold expression disappeared. His children, his missing heirs, sleeping peacefully against the chest of an unknown Omega. No ropes, no chains, no signs of struggle. The babies looked happier than they had inside the palace. Kale slowly walked closer. The girl never moved. Her breathing remained calm. She looked exhausted rather than dangerous. General Darius raised his sword. She must have bewitched them. Another warrior nodded quickly. "Kill her before she escapes." Kale raised one hand. No one moves. The warriors froze. The king crouched only a few steps away from the sleeping Omega. His sharp eyes searched every detail. Torn clothing, bare feet marked by cuts, thin hands rough from years of hard labor. Nothing about her suggested power. Nothing explained why his heirs trusted her. One tiny cub opened sleepy blue eyes. The little wolf looked directly at Kale, then gently pressed closer against the Omega's heart. A deep protective growl escaped the newborn cub. Every warrior stiffened. Royal cubs never growled at their own father. General Darius finally lost patience. "I will separate them." Before anyone could stop him, he reached toward the nearest cub. The world exploded. Brilliant blue light burst from the tiny cub's body. The force slammed into the warriors like a hurricane. Massive alpha wolves flew backward through the air. Armor crashed against trees. Swords scattered across the forest floor. General Darius struck a fallen log with enough force to crack solid wood. Several warriors coughed blood. The clearing fell silent once more. No one understood what had happened. The newborn cubs had unleashed pure alpha magic. Power that should have been impossible at their age. Kale slowly stood. For the first time since becoming Alpha King, uncertainty entered his eyes. The little cub simply yawned before curling against the Omega again. As if protecting her was the most natural thing in the world. A soft breeze moved through the clearing. The girl's necklace slipped from beneath her torn dress. A silver pendant rested against her skin. Kale felt his heartbeat stop. The symbol carved into the metal had been erased from history decades ago. A crescent moon wrapped around the head of a silver wolf. The lost crest of the first moon royal bloodline. Only one family had ever carried that mark. Every member of that bloodline had supposedly died 22 years earlier. The sleeping Omega suddenly stirred. Her sapphire blue eyes slowly opened. For a moment they looked lost. Then they met Kale's gaze. There was no fear inside them. Only confusion. She looked down at the tiny cubs sleeping against her before lifting her eyes toward the king. Her quiet voice drifted through the silent forest. "Why do your children know my heartbeat?" No one answered. 'Cause no one had an answer. And somewhere deep inside the ancient forest an unseen voice whispered a single sentence that only the oldest spirits could hear. "The lost blood has finally returned." No one spoke after Lyra asked her question. The forest seemed to hold its breath along with every wolf standing beneath the ancient trees. Alpha King Kale looked into the young Omega's sapphire eyes, searching for deception, fear, or guilt. He found none of them. She looked as confused as everyone else. The two royal cubs remained asleep against her chest as though the entire world had disappeared around them. Kale had spent countless nights beside those cubs since their birth. He knew every sound they made, every movement, every instinct. Never once had they rested this peacefully. It was a sight that made no sense. Yet it stood before him like undeniable truth. General Darius slowly climbed to his feet, wiping blood from the corner of his mouth. His pride had been wounded almost as deeply as his body. He glared at Lyra with growing hatred. "This is dark magic. She has enchanted the heirs." Several warriors immediately agreed. No ordinary Omega can command royal blood. She must be executed before the curse spreads. The angry voices echoed through the clearing until Kale raised one hand. Silence returned. His sharp eyes never left Lyra. "What is your name?" The young woman lowered her eyes for a moment as though searching through memories hidden beneath years of pain. "Lyra. And your family?" A shadow crossed her face. "I do not remember." The answer sounded honest. Too honest. Cale frowned. "You remember nothing." She slowly shook her head. "I remember waking inside a cold barn when I was 8 years old. An old woman found me and raised me until she died 3 winters ago. Everything before that is empty." The confession settled heavily over the clearing. General Darius folded his arms. "Convenient." Lyra lifted her tired eyes toward him. "I wish it were." Those 5 words carried so much quiet sadness that even a few warriors looked away. Cale took another slow step forward. The royal cubs opened their eyes again. Their tiny ears flattened as they watched every movement around Lyra. They did not growl this time. Instead they pressed even closer to her heartbeat. The king noticed something strange. Their breathing matched hers perfectly. Every rise, every fall. As though their hearts had learned her rhythm. That should have been impossible. A sudden scream shattered the silence. Everyone turned. One frightened scout burst through the trees. "Your Majesty. More wolves are gathering outside the forest." Cale narrowed his eyes. "Which pack?" "They are not ours." General Darius immediately drew his sword. "They have already heard about the missing heirs." Cale looked back toward Lyra. The forest was no longer safe. If rival packs discovered the royal cubs here, the kingdom would fall into chaos before sunset. He made his decision. "Take her to the palace." The warriors hesitated. None of them wanted to go near the mysterious Omega again. General Darius finally stepped forward. "We cannot carry the cubs." Cale answered without taking his eyes off Lyra. "You will not touch them." He looked directly at the young woman. "Can you stand?" Lyra nodded weakly. She carefully rose to her feet with one cub resting in each arm. The tiny wolves remained asleep against her, as if they had no intention of leaving. The warriors watched in stunned silence. No struggle. No resistance. Nothing. It looked as though the heirs had chosen to follow her. The journey back to the palace felt longer than anyone remembered. Word spread faster than the marching wolves. By the time the royal gates appeared on the horizon, hundreds of citizens had gathered outside. People climbed onto wagons and stone walls trying to see what was happening. Whispers turned into shouting. "That is the Omega. She stole the heirs. Kill her. Save the royal bloodline." Rotten fruit struck the ground near Lyra's feet. A stone bounced across the road. Another hit her shoulder. She stumbled but refused to let go of the sleeping cubs. An old woman pushed through the crowd. "You monster." She threw a handful of dirt toward Lyra. "It should have been your children who vanished." The words pierced deeper than any blade. Lyra lowered her head and continued walking. She did not defend herself. She did not cry. She simply held the cubs closer. Cale noticed. For reasons he could not explain, something about her quiet strength unsettled him. Most prisoners begged. Most screamed. She accepted every insult without hatred. That frightened him more than anger ever could. Inside the palace, the royal council had already assembled. Powerful alphas from every noble family filled the great hall. Queen Selene stood beside the empty throne wearing a flawless white gown. Tears glistened in her eyes as she rushed toward the cubs. "My babies." She reached out. Both cubs instantly buried their faces against Lyra's neck. Tiny growls echoed through the hall. Queen Selene froze. The entire court stared in disbelief. A painful silence followed. The queen slowly lowered her hands. Only one person noticed the brief flash of fear hidden behind her sorrow. Elder Orion. The old advisor watched Selene carefully. For only a heartbeat her face had revealed something unexpected. Not grief. Not relief. Fear. It vanished so quickly that no one else seemed to notice. General Darius stepped into the center of the hall. This Omega was found holding the royal heirs deep inside the forbidden forest. An uproar erupted. One elder slammed his staff against the marble floor. "Execute her immediately." Another pointed toward Lyra. "No trial is needed. Her death will cleanse the kingdom." Voices crashed together until Kale stood. His command silenced everyone. "No one will sentence her until I know how my heirs reached her." One noble alpha laughed bitterly. "The answer is obvious." He walked closer to Lyra. "You are an Omega." His voice dripped with contempt. "You are beneath every wolf in this kingdom." He circled around her slowly. "You are dirt pretending to breathe." Lyra remained silent. The cubs looked up at the alpha. Their glowing blue eyes suddenly narrowed. Before anyone understood what was happening, the noble alpha cried out. An invisible force hurled him backward across the hall. He crashed into a marble pillar before collapsing unconscious onto the floor. The room fell silent again. No one had touched him. Every eye turned toward the tiny cubs. Queen Celine's hands trembled ever so slightly. She hid them inside her sleeves. Kel noticed. His suspicion deepened. That night Lyra was locked inside the oldest prison beneath the palace. Heavy chains wrapped around her wrists, though no one dared separate her from the cubs. The babies refused to leave her side, and every attempt had ended in disaster. A single torch flickered outside her cell. The cold stone walls pressed in from every direction. Lyra leaned against the wall with the sleeping cubs resting beside her. For the first time since waking beneath the silver tree, she allowed herself to cry. Soft tears rolled silently down her face. "I do not even know who I am." One tiny cub lifted its head. It gently touched her cheek with its nose, as if promising she would never be alone again. At that exact moment, a sharp silver light appeared beneath the skin of her neck. A crescent-shaped mark slowly glowed against the darkness. Far above the prison, Elder Orion was reading a forgotten scroll inside the royal library. The instant the mark awakened, every candle in the room burst into silver flame. The old man's hands began to shake. He stared at the ancient prophecy written across faded parchment. His voice became nothing more than a whisper. "It cannot be." Then he read the final forgotten line. "When the lost daughter bears the mark once more, the true blood of the moon shall awaken, and every lie built upon the throne shall fall." Elder Orion closed the scroll with trembling hands. Because after 22 years the prophecy had finally begun. Elder Orion did not sleep that night. The ancient scroll lay open across the wooden table while silver candle flames danced without wind. His old eyes moved over the faded words again and again. Every sentence carried a memory he had spent more than 20 years trying to bury. He wanted to believe the prophecy was nothing more than an old legend. Yet the glowing mark on the Omega girl's neck had awakened the sacred flames. Ancient magic never lied. He slowly closed the scroll. If she truly bears the first moon blood, then someone has spent 22 years hiding the greatest secret in our kingdom. A soft knock echoed outside the library. General Darius entered quietly. "The king wishes to know if you have discovered anything." Orion studied the commander for a long moment. "You once fought beside the old royal family." Darius looked surprised. "That was many years ago. You survived the night they were slaughtered." The commander's face slowly hardened. "I survived. But you never spoke about what you saw." A long silence filled the room. Finally Darius looked toward the window. "Because no one would have believed me." Before Orion could ask another question, the commander turned and walked away. The old advisor watched him disappear down the hallway. The past was beginning to wake. Deep beneath the palace, Lyra remained awake inside the cold prison cell. The two royal cubs slept peacefully beside her on a bed of folded blankets that one kind servant had secretly brought during the night. She gently brushed her fingers through the soft silver fur covering their tiny backs. Neither cub wanted to leave her side. Felt strange, comforting, almost familiar, as though she had protected them long before meeting them. The thought frightened her. She closed her eyes and tried to remember anything before the age of 8. Darkness. Vain. Someone running. A woman crying. Then nothing. Every memory shattered before she could reach it. Suddenly one of the cubs lifted its head. Its ears stood straight. It stared toward the prison door. A low warning growl escaped its tiny throat. Lyra slowly looked up. The hallway outside had become unnaturally quiet. Even the guards had stopped speaking. Then she heard footsteps. Low. Careful. Almost silent. A hooded figure appeared beyond the iron bars carrying a lantern. The stranger stopped outside the cell. You should be asleep. Lyra frowned. I do not know you. No. The voice was soft. But I knew your mother. Lyra's heart skipped. Before she could speak again, another voice echoed from farther down the corridor. Who is there? The hooded stranger quickly stepped backward into the shadows. When the moon rises tomorrow night, do not trust anyone wearing the royal crest. Then the figure disappeared. By the time the guards reached the hallway, no one remained. Lyra stood frozen. Her mother. No one had ever spoken about her before. Not once. Above the prison, Queen Selene stood inside her private chamber staring into a silver mirror. Her beautiful face showed no trace of the tears she had displayed before the court. She looked cold, careful, dangerous. Across the room, a masked man knelt before her. The girl still lives. Selene slowly turned. That is the problem. The king refuses to execute her. The assassin lowered his head. Then give the order. Selene walked toward the window where moonlight covered the palace gardens. No witnesses. No mistakes. The Omega dies before sunrise. The assassin disappeared into the darkness. Selene remained alone. She gently placed one hand against her chest. They were supposed to forget you forever. Her whisper faded into the night. Hours passed. The palace fell silent. Clouds covered the moon. The prison became darker than ever before. Lyra finally drifted into light sleep with the cubs resting against her arms. Then a sharp metallic sound broke the silence. Blick. One prison door opened. Another. Then another. The guards outside never cried for help. They never shouted. Only silence remained. One of the cubs suddenly sprang to its feet. Its glowing blue eyes blazed like stars. Lyra opened her eyes. She immediately sensed danger. A step. Rest. Closing in. 3 masked figures rushed into the hallway carrying curved black blades. The nearest guard already lay motionless on the floor. One assassin pointed toward Lyra. Kill the girl. The prison exploded into motion. The first attacker swung his blade through the bars. Lyra pulled the cubs behind her and threw herself against the stone wall. Steel scraped across iron. Sparks flew into the darkness. Another assassin unlocked the prison door. The heavy gate swung open. Their eyes burned with murderous purpose. There will be no witnesses. The lead assassin charged. Lyra grabbed the only thing within reach. A broken wooden stool. She swung it with every ounce of strength she had. The wood shattered across the assassin's shoulder. He barely stumbled. Fear raced through her body. She had nowhere left to run. Then the smaller cub released a fierce howl. Silver light erupted from its tiny body. The prison walls trembled. Every torch burst into blue flame. The assassins staggered backward, covering their eyes. The second cub leaped forward with impossible speed and landed between Lyra and the attackers. Its tiny body suddenly became surrounded by glowing ancient symbols spinning through the air. The symbols were unlike any magic Lyra had ever seen. The lead assassin looked horrified. The Moon Guardian's seal. Before he could finish speaking, an invisible force slammed him into the stone wall. His weapon shattered. The remaining attackers fled down the corridor in panic. But they never escaped. General Darius and dozens of royal warriors stormed into the prison from the opposite entrance. Steel clashed. Echoes filled the underground halls. Within moments the assassins lay defeated. One removed his own mask before anyone could question him. Then he swallowed a hidden poison capsule. Foam filled his mouth. He died without speaking a single word. General Darius knelt beside the body. No insignia. No family mark. They came prepared to disappear. Cale arrived only moments later. His eyes immediately searched the cell. He saw Lyra trembling while both cubs stood protectively in front of her. Relief flashed across his face before he hid it behind his usual cold expression. He stepped closer. "Are you hurt?" Lyra looked at him for several silent seconds. "They were not trying to kill your heirs." Cale frowned. "They came for me." Those words struck him harder than any blade. If someone wanted Lyra dead, then she was more important than anyone had imagined. As Cale turned toward General Darius, another servant rushed into the prison breathing heavily. "Your Majesty." "What is it?" "The royal archives." Cale's eyes narrowed. "What about them?" "They are burning." Without another word, everyone raced through the palace. By the time they reached the ancient archive tower, flames had already swallowed the highest floor. Scrolls centuries old floated through the air as glowing ashes. Royal guards formed desperate lines carrying water while scholars screamed in horror. Elder Orion stood outside the burning entrance. His face had turned pale. Cale grabbed his arm. "What happened?" Orion looked into the fire with haunted eyes. "This was never meant to destroy books. It was meant to erase history." Then a burning shelf collapsed inside the archive. Among the falling flames, Lyra caught the briefest glimpse of an enormous painting hidden behind the fire. It showed a smiling royal family standing beneath a silver moon. The queen in the painting looked almost identical to her. Before she could see more, the ceiling crashed down. The painting vanished beneath the flames. And with it disappeared the only proof that someone had spent decades trying to erase her from history. The smell of smoke lingered over the palace long after the flames were gone. Ash drifted through the morning air like silent snow. Servants carefully gathered the blackened remains of ancient scrolls while scholars stood frozen among the ruins of the royal archives. Every burned page felt like another piece of history disappearing forever. Alpha King Cale stood in the middle of the destruction without speaking. His eyes moved slowly across the collapsed shelves. Someone had not attacked the archives to destroy knowledge alone. Someone had come looking for one truth. And that truth was connected to the frightened Omega girl, who now stood quietly beneath the broken stone arch with the two royal cubs pressed against her legs. Lyra could not take her eyes away from the place where she had seen the painting. The woman's face inside the flames still haunted her thoughts. It had felt strangely familiar. Not because she recognized it, but because something inside her heart had stirred the moment she saw it. It was like hearing a forgotten lullaby from childhood. A memory she could almost touch before it slipped away again. Elder Orion slowly walked toward her, carrying something wrapped inside a piece of dark cloth. "I found this beneath the fallen stones." He carefully unfolded the cloth. Inside rested half of a silver medallion blackened by fire. Lyra reached for it without thinking. The instant her fingers touched the metal, a sharp pain shot through her head. The ruined archive vanished. She saw another place. A moonlit garden filled with white flowers. A little girl laughed while chasing glowing butterflies across the grass. A beautiful woman with silver hair knelt beside her and placed the same medallion around the child's neck. The woman smiled with tears in her eyes. "If we are ever separated, this will guide you home." Then everything changed. The peaceful garden erupted into screams. Flames climbed toward the sky. Warriors covered in blood stormed through the palace gates. The silver-haired woman pushed the little girl into the arms of an old guard. "Run!" The guard carried the child into the darkness while the woman turned back toward the burning palace. A deafening roar echoed behind them. Then the vision shattered. Lyra gasped and stumbled backward. The medallion slipped from her trembling hand. Cale caught her before she fell. "What happened?" She looked at him with tears filling her eyes. "I remembered." "What did you remember?" "A woman. A fire. Someone was trying to save me." Before she could say anything more, the memories disappeared like mist beneath the morning sun. Only the sadness remained. Cale slowly released her. His wolf stirred deep inside him. Not with anger, with unease. Everything surrounding Lyra was pulling him toward answers he had never wanted to question. Later that afternoon, the royal council gathered once again. This time the atmosphere felt even heavier. The attempted assassination had changed everything. No one could deny that someone inside the kingdom wanted Lyra dead. General Darius stood before the council. The assassins carried no marks. They belonged to no known pack. They entered the palace through hidden passages known only to members of the royal household. Whispers spread through the hall. Cale looked at every noble seated before him. The enemy walks among us. No one dared meet his eyes. Queen Selene remained perfectly calm. She folded her hands with graceful elegance. Perhaps the girl herself summoned them. Several nobles nodded immediately. She has already shown impossible magic. Selene turned toward Lyra with gentle sadness painted across her face. My king, I know your heart wishes to protect the truth. But every moment she remains here places our children in greater danger. Lyra looked directly at the queen. For the first time she noticed something strange. The queen never looked at the cubs. Not once. She only watched Lyra. As though she feared her rather than feared for her children. That single realization settled deep inside Lyra's mind. Queen Selene was hiding something. Before anyone could continue the debate, one of the royal cubs suddenly ran across the marble floor. The tiny wolf ignored every noble in the room. Ignored Cale. Ignored Selene. It stopped beside Elder Orion. Then it began scratching excitedly at the old advisor's robe. Orion looked confused until he reached into his pocket. His face slowly turned pale. He pulled out a tiny object wrapped in faded cloth. The second cub immediately joined the first. Both little wolves whimpered happily. Orion slowly opened the cloth. Inside rested a small crystal shaped like a crescent moon. The crystal began glowing with soft silver light. Every candle inside the great hall flickered at once. An old priest suddenly stood from his chair. His voice shook with fear. The Heartstone. No. That relic disappeared with the first Moon royal family. The crystal floated from Orion's hand. It drifted gently across the room until it stopped in front of Lyra. Without anyone touching it, the stone settled into her palm. Warmth spread through her body. The glowing mark on her neck appeared once again. This time it shone brighter than ever before. Ancient silver symbols spread across the marble floor beneath her feet. The entire hall trembled. Several nobles fell to their knees. Not by choice. Something greater than their own strength forced them down. Cale remained standing only through sheer will. His wolf howled inside him. Not in rage. In recognition. Then just as quickly as it began, the light disappeared. The symbols faded. The hall became silent once more. Lyra stared at the crystal resting in her hand. I do not understand. Neither did anyone else. Except one person. Queen Selene. For the briefest moment fear broke through her perfect smile. She knew exactly what the Heartstone meant. That evening she hurried into the oldest tower hidden within the palace walls. A spiral staircase led deep beneath the foundations until she reached a forgotten chamber sealed by ancient magic. Only one figure waited inside. An old woman dressed entirely in black. Her face remained hidden beneath a heavy hood. Without looking up she spoke. The seal has awakened. Selene struggled to hide the panic in her voice. It should have remained dormant. The old woman laughed softly. You cannot silence true blood forever. Selene stepped closer. Tell me how to stop her. The old woman finally lifted her head. Her pale eyes glowed like frozen ice. There is only one way. Before the next full moon she must never reach the Valley of Echoes. Selene frowned. What is there? The last gate. The place where every child of the first moon blood remembers who they truly are. Meanwhile, Lyra stood alone on the palace balcony holding the glowing crystal beneath the evening sky. The cubs rested quietly beside her. She looked toward the distant mountains glowing beneath the rising moon. A strange pull tugged at her heart. Not fear. Not curiosity. Something deeper. Like home calling to someone who had been lost for years. Behind her, Elder Orion appeared without making a sound. He stopped beside her and looked toward the same mountains. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "There is a place beyond those peaks where forgotten names are remembered." Lyra turned toward him. "What place?" The old advisor looked into her sapphire eyes. "The Valley of Echoes." Before he could say another word, an arrow suddenly tore through the darkness. It struck the stone railing only inches from Lyra's face. A second arrow followed. Then a third. Black-cloaked warriors poured over the palace walls from every direction. Their leader raised his sword toward the balcony. His voice thundered through the night. "Bring us the girl. Alive. Or burn the palace to the ground." The first burning arrow streaked across the night sky and crashed into the palace roof. Within seconds, flames climbed through the dry wooden beams. The peaceful silence that had settled over the kingdom only moments before disappeared beneath the sound of shouting soldiers and ringing alarm bells. Wolves rushed across the courtyards while frightened servants carried children toward the underground shelters. The royal fortress had survived countless wars, but this attack felt different. The enemy had not come to conquer the palace. They had come for one person. Lyra. Another arrow shattered against the balcony beside her. Stone exploded into dust. Before she could react, Alpha King Kale stepped in front of her without hesitation. His broad shoulders blocked the next volley of arrows as he drew his sword. "Stay behind me." His voice remained calm despite the chaos surrounding them. Lyra stared at him in surprise. Only hours earlier he had treated her as a dangerous prisoner. Now he stood between her and death. The two royal cubs rushed forward with fierce growls that sounded impossibly powerful for creatures so small. Their glowing blue eyes locked onto the black-cloaked warriors climbing over the palace walls. General Darius reached the balcony with a squad of elite guards. "The eastern gate has fallen." Kale immediately took command. "Protect the civilians. Seal the inner halls. No one reaches this tower." The commander nodded and disappeared into the battle. Steel clashed against steel below. The palace echoed with the sound of wolves shifting into their battle forms. The night itself seemed to tremble. Suddenly, one of the attackers leaped onto the balcony. His face remained hidden beneath a dark hood. His curved blade sliced through the air toward Lyra. Kale intercepted the strike with perfect timing. The impact sent sparks flying between them. The assassin twisted with unnatural speed and whispered something that made Kale's blood run cold. "The moon child belongs to us." Then he bit down on something hidden inside his mouth. "Poison." He collapsed before anyone could question him. Kale stared at the lifeless body. The moon child. Not the Omega. Not the prisoner. Someone else knew exactly who Lyra was. The attack continued for nearly an hour before the surviving invaders suddenly retreated into the darkness. Just as quickly as they had appeared, they vanished beyond the forest. The battlefield fell silent. Only smoke remained. Dozens of wounded warriors were carried through the palace gates. Kale looked toward the forest where the enemy had disappeared. "They never intended to win." General Darius frowned. "They wanted to test our defenses." Kale slowly shook his head. "No. They wanted to confirm she was here." His eyes found Lyra standing quietly beside the frightened cubs. The kingdom was no longer the safest place for her. It had become the most dangerous. Before dawn, Elder Orion gathered Kale, Lyra, and General Darius inside a hidden chamber beneath the throne room. The walls were carved with ancient silver wolves, unlike anything Lyra had ever seen. In the center of the room stood a circular stone table. Orion placed the glowing heart stone upon it. The crystal immediately projected a map made entirely of silver light. Mountains, rivers, ancient forests. One place shone brighter than all the others. The Valley of Echoes. Orion rested both hands on the table. There is no more time. Kale folded his arms. You know more than you have told us. The old advisor closed his eyes. I have spent 22 years protecting a promise. Lyra stepped closer. My promise. Orion looked at her with sadness. Your mother's. The room became perfectly still. Orion continued speaking. The night your family was attacked, your mother entrusted your life to those still loyal to the first moon blood. Lyra struggled to breathe. So I truly had a family. You did. Who were they? The old advisor hesitated. I cannot answer that until you reach the valley. The valley itself will reveal the truth. Kale's patience finally broke. Enough secrets. My kingdom is under attack. My heirs refuse to leave this girl. My palace burns. And still everyone speaks in riddles. Orion met the king's angry gaze without fear. Because if I reveal the truth too early, every person inside this room will die before sunset. No one spoke after that. Even Kale understood the fear behind the old man's words. The truth itself had become dangerous. By midday, preparations for the journey had begun. Only a handful of trusted warriors would accompany Lyra to the Valley of Echoes. The route remained hidden from every official map. Even General Darius admitted he had never traveled there. As servants packed supplies, Lyra quietly walked through the palace gardens. For the first time since arriving, she found a moment without shouting or accusations. The royal cubs chased butterflies across the grass while warm sunlight filtered through the trees. One tiny flower caught her attention. A silver moon blossom. Without knowing why, she gently touched its petals. The flower immediately opened wider. Soft glowing pollen drifted into the air. Behind her a quiet voice spoke. My mother used to say those flowers only bloom for our family. Lyra turned quickly. Queen Selene stood only a few steps away. She smiled warmly. Far warmer than she ever had before. I wish to apologize. Lyra remained silent. Selene lowered her eyes. I allowed fear to cloud my judgment. I only wanted to protect my children. The words sounded sincere, almost convincing. Then Selene reached into her sleeve and removed a small silver necklace. It belonged to an old friend. I think it belongs with you now. Lyra accepted it carefully. The moment she touched the necklace, the heart stone hanging around her neck suddenly became ice cold. A sharp pain spread through her chest. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. Before she could react, one of the royal cubs lunged forward. The tiny wolf knocked the necklace from Lyra's hands. Struck the ground. The silver chain snapped open. A cloud of black powder spilled onto the grass. General Darius rushed into the garden. His face changed instantly. Do not touch it. He knelt beside the broken necklace and examined the dark powder. His expression hardened. Nightshade. A single breath would stop a wolf's heart. Silence swallowed the garden. Lyra slowly lifted her eyes toward Queen Selene. The queen stood frozen. Only for a heartbeat. Then fear disappeared from her face. She looked offended instead. You think I poisoned her? General Darius looked directly at the queen. I think someone poisoned that necklace. Kale arrived moments later after hearing the commotion. His amber eyes moved from the broken necklace to Selene. Neither spoke. Years of trust cracked between them without a single word. Selene slowly backed away. I have done nothing wrong. She turned and walked calmly toward the palace. But as she disappeared through the stone archway, Kale noticed something he had never seen before. She was trembling. Not with sadness. With fear. That evening the small escort prepared to leave under the cover of darkness. Only Kale, General Darius, Elder Orion, Lyra, and the two royal cubs. No one else would know their destination. The palace gates slowly opened. Cold mountain winds swept across the road ahead. The Valley of Echoes waited somewhere beyond the distant peaks. As their horses crossed the old stone bridge, Lyra glanced back one final time. High above the palace, a lonely figure watched from the tallest tower. Queen Selene. She did not wave. She did not cry. She simply raised one black raven into the night sky. The bird disappeared into the darkness with terrifying speed. Far beyond the kingdom, deep inside the snow-covered mountains, a massive shadow stood before an ancient fortress carved into black stone. The raven landed upon the stranger's arm. He removed the tiny message tied beneath its wing. After reading only one line, he slowly smiled. His pale golden eyes glowed beneath the moon. So, the lost princess is finally coming home. He looked toward the Valley of Echoes hidden beyond the mountains. Then he gave a single quiet command. Prepare the gate. This time, she must not escape us again. The mountain road disappeared beneath a blanket of silver mist as dawn slowly climbed over the eastern peaks. The palace was now far behind them. Every step carried Lyra farther from the life she had known and closer to answers she had searched for without even realizing it. The air felt colder here. Every breath carried the scent of pine trees and ancient stone. Strange white birds circled high above the cliffs as though watching the small group from another world. No one spoke for a long time. Only the steady sound of horses walking across the narrow mountain path broke the silence. The two royal cubs moved happily beside Lyra instead of riding with the others. Sometimes they chased drifting leaves. Sometimes they stopped and looked into the forest as if they could hear voices no one else could hear. Kale noticed every movement. The cubs had become different since leaving the palace. Their blue eyes shone brighter. Their senses seemed sharper. Even their tiny bodies looked stronger. It was as though something hidden inside these mountains was calling to them. General Darius suddenly raised one hand. Everyone stopped. Fresh tracks covered the muddy ground ahead. Not wolf tracks. Human footprints. Dozens of them. They passed only a few hours ago. Kale slowly dismounted. They knew our route. Darius nodded. Someone warned them. No one needed to say the name. The Black Raven. Queen Selene. The thought settled heavily over the group. Kale remained silent, but something inside him began to crack. For years he had trusted the woman beside his throne more than anyone. Now every memory felt poisoned. They continued deeper into the mountains until the path narrowed between towering cliffs. Without warning, one of the royal cubs stopped walking. Its ears lifted. Its bright eyes stared toward a waterfall pouring down a wall of black stone. The cub whimpered softly. Then it ran. Lyra hurried after it. The others followed close behind. As they reached the waterfall, something impossible happened. The rushing water split apart without anyone touching it. Hidden behind the curtain of water stood an ancient stone doorway carved with silver wolves and crescent moons. The heart stone hanging around Lyra's neck suddenly glowed. The massive door slowly opened with a deep rumble that echoed through the valley. Cold air rushed out from the darkness beyond. Elder Orion smiled for the first time in many days. The first gate. Kale looked toward him. You knew this was here. I knew only one with the true blood could open it. Lyra stared into the ancient passage. I did not do anything. Orion gently shook his head. You only came home. The words lingered inside her heart. She had searched for that feeling her entire life. Now the mountains whispered it back to her. The passage led into a vast underground hall where glowing crystals covered the ceiling like stars. Rivers of clear water flowed through polished stone channels. Ancient statues lined both sides of the path. Every statue showed the same royal family. A silver-haired king. A graceful queen. A little girl smiling between them. Lyra stopped walking. Her eyes locked onto the child carved into the stone. She slowly reached out and touched the statue. The world vanished. She stood once again inside the beautiful moonlit garden from her memories. This time the vision remained clear. The little girl laughed while running through blooming flowers. The silver-haired king lifted her into his arms. You will rule with kindness one day. The child laughed. I only want to race the butterflies. The king smiled. That is exactly why you deserve the crown. The memory shifted. The same little girl now hid beneath a marble staircase while warriors filled the palace with screams. She watched helplessly as black-cloaked soldiers surrounded her parents. A man wearing a silver mask stepped forward. He pointed toward the royal family. No one survives. The silver-haired queen looked toward the staircase. Her eyes found the frightened child. She smiled through tears. Then she whispered only 2 words. Live on. The vision shattered. Lyra collapsed onto her knees. Tears poured down her face. I remember them. Kale immediately knelt beside her. What did you see? My parents. They were murdered. Her voice trembled. They were protecting me. Silence filled the ancient hall. Even General Darius lowered his head. He had seen that night. He had survived it. But hearing the truth spoken aloud reopened wounds he had hidden for decades. Before anyone could speak, another sound echoed through the chamber. Slow footsteps, dozens of them. From the darkness ahead, a line of warriors emerged wearing silver armor unlike anything Kale had ever seen. Their wolves walked proudly beside them. Every warrior stopped at the same moment. Then something astonishing happened. Without exchanging a single word, every one of them dropped to one knee before Lyra. Not before Kale. Not before the Alpha King. Before the young Omega. Their leader removed his helmet, revealing a man with long silver hair touched by age. His eyes filled with tears. My princess. The words echoed through the enormous hall. For a moment Lyra could not breathe. Princess. Title sounded impossible. The old warrior slowly stood. My name is Cashin. I commanded the Moon Guard before the royal family fell. We searched for you for 22 years. He gently placed one hand over his heart. We never stopped believing you were alive. Lyra looked around the chamber. Every warrior watched her with hope instead of suspicion. Respect instead of hatred. No one called her Omega. No one called her criminal. For the first time in her life she felt seen. Kale watched the scene in silence. His heart grew heavier with every passing second. If these warriors spoke the truth, then everything his kingdom believed about the first moon bloodline had been a lie. He looked toward Elder Orion. You knew. The old advisor nodded. I prayed I was wrong. Cashin slowly turned toward Kale. You wear the crown because hers was stolen. The words struck the Alpha King harder than any weapon. He did not argue. Deep inside he already feared they were true. Just then a loud horn echoed through the underground city. Every Moon Guard instantly reached for their weapons. One young scout came running through the hall breathing heavily. Commander. Cashin faced him. What happened? The northern gate. The scout struggled to catch his breath. They found us. Cashin's expression darkened. Who? The young warrior looked toward Lyra. His answer froze every heart inside the chamber. The silver mask has returned. The man who ordered the massacre. He is outside. And he has brought an army. The massive stone doors shook with the force of a thunderous impact. Then another. Dust rained from the ceiling. Outside thousands of wolves roared together. The Forgotten Kingdom had remained hidden for more than 2 decades. Now its greatest enemy had finally come to finish what he had started. The ancient gates shook again. Dust drifted from the stone ceiling while deep cracks spread across the massive doors that had protected the hidden kingdom for more than 20 years. Every impact echoed through the underground city like the heartbeat of an approaching storm. Children were rushed into hidden shelters. Warriors gathered along the inner walls with silver shields raised high. No one spoke loudly. Fear moved silently from one face to another. Lyra stood in the center of the great hall with the heart stone glowing softly against her chest. Only hours ago she had believed she was nothing more than a forgotten Omega. Now hundreds of warriors looked at her as their lost princess. The weight of those hopeful eyes frightened her more than the enemy waiting outside. Commander Cashin walked toward her carrying a long wooden chest wrapped in faded blue cloth. He carefully opened it. Inside rested a beautiful sword unlike any weapon Lyra had ever seen. Its silver blade reflected the crystal lights above. Ancient moon symbols glowed across the steel. The handle was wrapped in white leather that had never faded despite the passing years. Cashin gently lifted the weapon. "This belonged to your mother." Lyra stared at it without moving. "I have never held a sword." Cashin smiled sadly. "You held this one when you were only 6 years old." She looked at him with surprise. "I did. You called it too heavy." Several older warriors quietly laughed through their tears. For a brief moment sadness gave way to warmth. Cashin placed the sword into her hands. The instant her fingers closed around the grip, the glowing symbols awakened. Silver light flowed across the blade like living water. The sword had recognized its rightful owner. A quiet gasp spread through the hall. Even Kale could not hide his astonishment. The weapon had remained silent for more than 2 decades. Now it had awakened without hesitation. Elder Orion slowly stepped forward. "The blood remembers." Outside, another violent impact slammed against the gates. The laughter disappeared. Reality returned. General Darius climbed one of the stone watchtowers overlooking the entrance. His sharp eyes studied the enemy gathered beyond the valley. Thousands of wolves waited beneath black banners. Rows of armored warriors stretched across the snow. At their center stood a tall man wearing polished silver armor beneath a long black cloak. His face remained hidden behind a shining silver mask. He carried no shield, no fear, only patience. Darius climbed back down. "They are not rushing. They know these gates cannot stand forever." Kale looked toward Cashin. "How long?" The commander answered honestly. "If they continue striking. Before sunset." Silence settled over everyone. The Hidden Kingdom had survived in secret for 22 years. Today it would either live again, or disappear forever. Lyra quietly walked away from the crowded hall. She followed a narrow stone passage until she reached a peaceful underground lake glowing beneath thousands of hanging crystals. The water remained perfectly still. She knelt beside it. The reflection staring back at her looked different now. Not because her face had changed. Because her eyes had. For the first time they held purpose instead of uncertainty. Soft footsteps echoed behind her. Kale stopped beside the lake. Neither spoke for several moments. Finally he broke the silence. "When I first found you, I believed you had stolen my children." Lyra looked across the glowing water. "I know. I judged you before hearing your truth." "You did. I failed you." His voice carried no pride, only regret. Lyra slowly turned toward him. "You protected your family. I would have done the same." Kale lowered his head. "I should have seen your kindness. I should have questioned the lies sooner." His words were honest. Nothing more. Nothing less. For the first time Lyra saw the man beneath the crown. Not the feared Alpha King. Simply someone carrying the weight of his mistakes. Before either could speak again, the 2 royal cubs came running toward them. They happily circled around Lyra before stopping beside Kale. One tiny cub gently nudged his father's hand. The other rested against Lyra's leg. Kale smiled for the first time in days. "They have chosen both of us." Lyra looked down at the cubs. "They have been trying to tell us something from the beginning." A loud horn suddenly echoed through the tunnels. Everyone rushed back toward the entrance. A single white flag now waved outside the damaged gates. Commander Cashin frowned. "A messenger." Against every instinct he ordered the gates opened only enough to admit one rider. The stranger entered alone. He wore black armor but carried no weapon. He stopped before Lyra and slowly knelt. "My master sends a message." Cashin remained ready to strike. "Speak." The messenger lifted his eyes toward Lyra. "The silver mask remembers the little princess." A cold silence swept across the hall. "He says she still cries exactly like her mother." Lyra felt her heartbeat quicken. The messenger continued without emotion. He offers peace. Cashin laughed bitterly. There is no peace left. The messenger ignored him. He asks only for the girl. Give her to us. Everyone else lives. The hidden city erupted with angry voices. Warriors gripped their weapons. Lyra slowly stepped forward. What does he want from me? The messenger looked directly into her eyes. He wants back what belongs to him. Kale immediately moved between them. She belongs to no one. The messenger smiled for the first time. He expected you to say that. Then he reached inside his cloak. Every warrior prepared to attack. Instead he removed an old folded piece of cloth. Carefully he opened it. Inside lay a tiny silver ribbon stained by time. Lyra gasped. The memory struck instantly. A little girl wearing the same ribbon while laughing inside the moonlit garden. Her mother tying it gently into her hair. Tears filled Lyra's eyes. Where did you get that? The messenger's smile disappeared. The silver mask took it from your mother's body. Rage exploded inside the hall. Before anyone could stop him, General Darius drew his sword. The messenger never resisted. The blade rested against his throat. Tell me where your master is. The messenger calmly answered. He is closer than you think. Then he looked directly at Kale. And he asked me to remind the Alpha King of one forgotten promise. Kale frowned. I have never met him. The messenger slowly shook his head. Oh, you have. You were there on the night the first moon palace burned. The words struck Kale like lightning. Fragments of memory flashed through his mind. A battlefield. Moat. A dying soldier grabbing his arm. Someone wearing a silver mask standing across the burning courtyard. A voice saying only one sentence. Walk away. Kale staggered backward. He had buried that memory so deeply that he had almost convinced himself it never happened. The messenger quietly stood. My master says the debt you left unpaid has finally returned. Before anyone could seize him, he bit into another hidden poison capsule. He collapsed onto the stone floor. Within seconds he was dead. No answers remained. Only more questions. Kale stared silently at the lifeless messenger. His breathing grew heavier. Then slowly he looked toward Lyra. His voice barely rose above a whisper. I was there. I remember the fire. I remember seeing the man in the silver mask. He closed his eyes. And I think I unknowingly helped him escape. The confession froze the entire chamber. Lyra could only stare at him. Because in that single heartbreaking moment she realized the man standing beside her had not murdered her family. But he might have saved the one who did. Outside the hidden gates, the silver mask slowly removed one black glove and placed his hand against the ancient stone. A cruel smile spread beneath the cold metal covering his face. The truth is finally waking. And when it does, they will destroy each other for me. The confession hung over the hidden kingdom like a storm that refused to move. No one spoke after Kale admitted that he had seen the silver mask on the night the first moon palace burned. Even the warriors who had survived that terrible massacre looked at him with uncertain eyes. Some saw an enemy. Some saw a man carrying unbearable guilt. Lyra stood motionless. Her heart wanted to believe that Kale had never meant to help the murderer. Yet pain did not care about intentions. The truth had opened an old wound that had never truly healed. Before anyone could speak another word, the mountain itself began to tremble. A thunderous crash echoed through the valley. The ancient gates split apart. Stone blocks the size of wagons crashed onto the ground as clouds of dust swallowed the entrance. A freezing wind rushed through the broken opening carrying the smell of snow and blood. Then dark figures slowly appeared through the smoke. Thousands of armored wolves marched into the hidden valley with perfect discipline. Their black banners rose above them like shadows covering the sky. At their center walked the silver mask. He carried no shield and no visible fear. His silver armor reflected the pale light pouring through the broken gate. Every step echoed across the ancient stone floor until he finally stopped only a short distance away from the defenders. He looked directly at Lyra. "My little princess." His calm voice echoed through the valley. "You survived." Lyra tightened her grip around her mother's glowing sword. "You murdered my family." The silver mask slowly tilted his head. "I ended one kingdom so another could be born." His answer sent anger racing through every warrior standing beside her. Commander Cashin raised his sword high. "Moon Guard." His powerful voice rolled across the valley. "Protect the true blood." Hundreds of silver-armored warriors answered together. Their battle cry shook the ancient walls. Then the first charge began. Steel crashed against steel. The valley erupted into chaos. Wolves shifted in every direction as snow mixed with flying sparks. The sound of growls echoed through the mountains while arrows darkened the sky. General Darius fought like a man trying to erase 22 years of regret. Every strike drove another enemy backward. Every movement protected the warriors beside him instead of chasing glory. Kale transformed into his massive black wolf. His amber eyes burned with determination as he threw himself into the center of the enemy ranks. Warriors scattered before him. His roar rolled through the valley like thunder. The royal cubs watched their father for only a heartbeat before they joined the battle in their own way. Though still young, they unleashed brilliant streams of blue alpha energy that knocked enemies away from Lyra whenever danger came too close. Lyra had never stood in the middle of a battlefield before. Fear gripped her heart. Her hands trembled around the sword. She took one uncertain step forward. An enemy warrior rushed toward her with a raised axe. She closed her eyes. Then instinct awakened. Her body moved before her thoughts could catch it. The silver blade swept through the air with perfect grace. The axe split in half. The warrior stumbled backward in shock. Light flowed from the ancient sword into Lyra's arms. She could almost hear another voice whispering inside her heart. "Do not fear. Remember." The battlefield disappeared for a single heartbeat. She saw her mother standing inside a bright training hall, smiling as she corrected the stance of a little girl holding the same sword. "Again." The woman laughed softly. "Again until it becomes part of your soul." The vision vanished. Lyra opened her eyes. Her movements became smoother, stronger. Every forgotten lesson returned like water flowing back into a dry river. Commander Cashin watched in silent amazement. The princess remembers. Across the battlefield, the silver mask noticed it as well. He slowly smiled beneath the metal covering his face. "So the blood has awakened." He lifted one hand. His personal guards stepped aside. He walked toward Lyra alone. No fear touched his voice. "You deserve answers." Kale immediately moved to intercept him. The silver mask raised his empty hands. "I did not come to fight the king. I came to tell the princess the truth." Lyra refused to lower her sword. "You have spoken nothing but lies." He slowly nodded. "Then ask yourself one question. If I wanted you dead, then why did I allow you to escape as a child?" The words struck everyone with confusion. Lyra frowned. "You ordered the massacre." "I did." "Then why am I alive?" The silver mask looked toward Elder Orion. "Ask him." Every eye turned toward the old advisor. Orion closed his eyes. Pain covered his weathered face. "There is something I never told you." His voice trembled. "The night your parents died, I begged the silver mask to spare you." Silence swallowed the valley. "I offered my own life." He accepted one condition. Lyra stared at him in disbelief. "What condition?" "That you would never know who you truly were." Tears filled Orion's eyes. "I believed hiding you was the only way to keep you alive." The truth settled heavily over everyone. The silver mask gave a slow nod. The old man chose wisely. "If your bloodline had been known, every kingdom would have hunted you." Lyra's heart battled between gratitude and anger. She had survived because of Orion. She had also lost her identity because of him. Before anyone could say another word, Queen Celine's voice suddenly echoed across the valley. Enough! Every head turned. She rode into the hidden kingdom surrounded by hundreds of palace soldiers. Cale stared at her in disbelief. Celine! She climbed down from her horse with perfect calm. You followed us. I had no choice. She walked straight toward the silver mask. Then something happened that stunned every soul present. She knelt before him. My lord! A wave of disbelief swept through both armies. Cale could barely speak. You were working with him. Celine slowly lifted her eyes. I was saving the kingdom. Cashin pointed his sword toward her. You betrayed every innocent soul. Celine showed no regret. The first Moon bloodline would have brought endless war. The old dynasty had to disappear. Cale looked at the woman he had called his queen for years. His voice broke. Our children. Were they only another lie? For the first time sorrow appeared in Celine's eyes. No. I loved them. I still do. But I loved power more. The words cut deeper than any blade. The royal cubs let out frightened cries. They ran away from Celine and pressed themselves against Lyra once again. The entire valley witnessed it. The heirs had made their choice. Not their mother, Lyra. Queen Celine watched the cubs hide beside the young woman and finally understood what she could never change. Love could not be stolen. It could only be earned. The silver mask laughed quietly. The prophecy has completed itself. He slowly removed one metal glove, revealing a strange black mark burned into his wrist. The Moon Temple is opening. The mountains began to shake once more. High above the battlefield, a brilliant column of silver light burst into the sky. Ancient stone doors hidden within the cliffs slowly opened after centuries of silence. A deep voice echoed across the valley. Not from any living person. From the mountain itself. Let the true heir enter. Let the final judgment begin. Every warrior looked toward the glowing temple high above the cliffs, because they all understood the same terrifying truth. The battle for the throne was over. Now the battle for the truth was about to begin. The silver light pouring from the Moon Temple covered the entire valley until the battlefield disappeared beneath a glowing mist. Every warrior lowered their weapon without being ordered. Every wolf fell silent. It felt as though the mountain itself had spoken and no living creature possessed the courage to answer. Lyra looked toward the ancient temple standing high above the cliffs. Its towering stone doors stood open. A long stairway carved into the mountain shone beneath streams of silver light. The heart stone resting against her chest pulsed gently. Not pulling her. Welcoming her. She took one slow step forward. No one tried to stop her. Not Cale. Not Cashin. Not even the silver mask. The two royal cubs hurried after her without hesitation. Cale watched them disappear onto the sacred stairway and followed several steps behind. He no longer cared about crowns or titles. The only thing that mattered now was protecting the woman he had once condemned without knowing the truth. The climb felt endless. Each step carried another forgotten whisper. Soft voices drifted through the mountain. Old prayers. Ancient promises. Lullabies sung by mothers whose names had disappeared from history. Lyra felt tears forming before she even understood why. Every sound felt familiar. Every breath carried memories that had waited 22 years to return. At last she reached the temple entrance. The enormous hall beyond looked untouched by time. Moonlight poured through an opening in the ceiling. White pillars surrounded a circular floor carved with glowing silver symbols. At the center rested a crystal throne unlike anything she had ever imagined. It did not look like a seat of power. It looked like a promise. The moment Lyra stepped inside, the symbols beneath her feet awakened. Silver light spread through the temple. The walls trembled gently. Ancient murals began glowing one after another. Scenes from the Forgotten Kingdom appeared across the stone. Children laughing beneath silver trees. Kings protecting their people. Queens healing wounded wolves. A kingdom built not through fear, but through compassion. Then the final mural awakened. The massacre. Flames swallowed the royal palace. The silver mask stood at the gates while soldiers surrounded the royal family. Lyra watched silently as the truth unfolded before her eyes. Her father fought until his final breath. Her mother refused to abandon him. Then Elder Orion appeared carrying a frightened little girl hidden beneath a dark cloak. He begged the silver mask to spare her. The masked warrior remained silent for several long moments. Finally he lowered his sword. The child disappeared into the darkness. The mural ended. No one inside the temple spoke. The truth had finally been revealed. Orion had saved Lyra. But only because the silver mask had allowed her to live. Slow footsteps echoed behind them. The silver mask entered the temple alone. He removed his sword and placed it upon the stone floor. Then he slowly reached up and lifted away the silver mask that had hidden his face for more than 2 decades. A tired older man looked back at them. His dark hair had turned almost completely white. Deep scars crossed one side of his face. His eyes no longer held pride, only exhaustion. Lyra stared at him. "You?" The man nodded slowly. "My name is Lucian. I was once the commander of your father's army." Shock spread across the temple. Cassian stepped forward in disbelief. "You betrayed your own king." Lucian lowered his eyes. "I believed I was saving the kingdom." He looked toward Lyra. "Your father refused to unite the rival pacts through conquest. He believed peace could never be forced. I believed he was weak. So I followed those who promised strength." His voice became quieter. "When the palace burned, I finally understood what I had created." He looked directly into Lyra's eyes. "I did not save you because I was kind. I saved you because I was already drowning in regret." Silence followed his confession. Kale slowly stepped forward. "I met you that night." Lucian nodded. "You did. You were only a young alpha leading reinforcements from the western border. I ordered my soldiers to retreat before you reached the palace." Kale remembered everything now. Blood. A dying child crying beneath the ruins. He had believed the battle was already over. He had never searched farther. He closed his eyes. "I failed them." Lucian gently shook his head. "You were deceived as completely as everyone else." The temple suddenly filled with brilliant light. The crystal throne rose slowly into the air. A gentle female voice echoed through the sacred hall. Not from any living person. From the moon temple itself. "The true guardian has returned." The ancient symbols beneath Lyra's feet expanded until they surrounded every person inside the temple. The heart stone floated from her neck. It hovered above the crystal throne before breaking apart into countless streams of silver light. Those streams circled Lyra like living stars. Her torn clothing transformed before everyone's eyes. The worn gray omega dress disappeared beneath flowing silver and midnight blue robes woven with glowing moon patterns. A delicate moonstone crown settled gently upon her head. Her silver-white hair shimmered beneath the falling light. Her sapphire eyes glowed with quiet strength. No one saw an abandoned Omega anymore. They saw the true Luna. Every moon guard dropped to one knee. Commander Cassian lowered his head with tears shining in his eyes. "Our queen has returned." General Darius followed. Then Elder Orion. One by one every warrior inside the temple knelt. Even Kale slowly bowed his head. Not because anyone forced him. Because his heart recognized the truth before his pride could resist it. Lyra looked at him with gentle eyes. "You do not need to kneel." Kale slowly stood. "I am not kneeling before a queen. I am asking forgiveness from the woman I failed." The words carried more weight than any royal decree. For a long moment neither moved. Then Lyra stepped toward him. "I cannot erase the pain. I cannot forget what happened." Kale lowered his eyes. "I know. But I also know you searched for truth when everyone else wanted blood." A faint smile touched her face. So today I choose something my parents believed in. Mercy. The heavy burden inside Kale finally broke. For the first time in years he allowed himself to breathe without the armor surrounding his heart. Behind them Queen Selene slowly entered the temple under heavy guard. She looked at Lyra wearing the ancient crown. The sight stole every remaining trace of hope from her face. She fell to her knees. I wanted power. I told myself it was for the kingdom. But it was only for myself. She looked toward the royal cubs. Tears rolled freely down her cheeks. I do not ask for forgiveness. I only ask that my children grow without my mistakes. Lyra looked toward the cubs. The two little wolves quietly walked across the temple. For a moment everyone believed they would stop beside Selene. Instead they gently pressed themselves against Lyra's legs before looking back at Kale. One cub nudged his hand. The other rested its head against Lyra. The message was simple. Not one parent, both. The moon goddess had never brought them together by accident. They had always been the bridge between two broken hearts and two broken bloodlines. Outside the temple the armies slowly lowered their weapons. News spread through the valley like the first light of dawn. The lost princess had returned. The war was over. Lucian walked toward the temple entrance. No chains bound him. No guards followed. He looked back only once. My punishment began the night I betrayed your family. Without another word he stepped into the bright morning light and disappeared into the mountains alone. No one ever saw him again. As the first rays of sunrise crossed the valley, Lyra and Kale walked together onto the temple steps. Thousands of wolves filled the mountains below. Moon guards stood beside palace warriors. Former enemies stood shoulder to shoulder. No one cheered. No one shouted. They simply bowed together. Not to fear. Not to power. But to hope. Lyra looked across the United Kingdom. The frightened Omega who had awakened beneath a lonely silver tree no longer existed. In her place stood the woman whose heartbeat had called two innocent cubs across an entire kingdom. Because long before anyone knew her name, the moon goddess had already chosen her. Not to rule the wolves, but to remind them what a true family was meant to be.